Okay, so welcome to the Path Less Chosen, the podcast showing you the careers they don't teach you about in school. My name's Sol,
And I'm Jamie.
and this week's episode is with Ellie. Ellie is the founder and CEO of Press Upload, working with athletes to build their personal brand. Jamie, a great intersection between both of our lives and interests. But what can you, as the listener, expect from the episode today?
Yep, absolutely right. Really interesting one for both of us. Been looking forward to this one for a while. I think the kind of three key things that I hope people will find really fascinating today is firstly, how important marketability and personal branding is for athletes and also general people across social media for monetizing it. Secondly, why she wants to be like Stephen Bartlett but without the fame. And thirdly, how she's going about empowering females that are starting their own businesses.
Lovely. Absolutely love it. Jamie, let's get into the episode.
Oh, Ellie, thank you so much for joining us. One that I'm particularly looking forward to getting into. And I think what we'll definitely do on the back of this podcast is drop your links to your website and your own social media below so anyone can check it out. And anyone that goes onto your website straight away will see that your whole focus is around athletes, personal brand, and marketability. You give 6 reasons on there, which I found really interesting as to why athletes should build a personal brand. But I think where we want to start off with, just with the real basic stuff, what does it mean in terms of marketability and what does a personal brand mean when it comes to athletes?
Such a good question. I think it's with the rise of athlete-driven content, there is that need for athletes to create, I guess, a presence and a persona off the pitch or off the court. We're not only seeing opportunities for the biggest of athletes, like LeBron James and Travis Kelce's. We're seeing opportunities for athletes across all the different sports. Whether they're a young athlete, older athletes who get into sort of taking their marketability seriously. So many athletes are building other brands, businesses, having brand partnerships with some of the biggest brands, and I think that's ultimately because they've taken the initiative to build their persona, showcase their personality off the pitch, because they've got the opportunity to just build something huge that just is beyond their life as an athlete. It can, what we look at is obviously sort of post-career kind of opportunities, looking into retirement, setting themselves up for that. I just think there's a world of opportunity in the marketability, personal branding space. I think will kind of explode because athletes are now taking, the initiative and the opportunity to tap into, the power and tools of social media, because it truly can change the trajectory of, athletes' careers.
I think the next question is then to come back to yourself. How did you discover this and how did you decide this is something that you could help with?
100%. So my background is travel content creation. So I've been creating my own social media content for the last sort of 4 or 5 years and love doing it myself, but kind of always had this desire to create something that was bigger than doing it myself. So that's why I launched Press Upload, launched last April. It was a sort of general personal branding social media agency, but I was searching for a niche for quite a few months, somewhere where we could pivot to, where we had a niche. I think that was sort of super important. And for a few months I was thinking athletes, like sport athletes, like, I was played quite a lot of sport when I was younger. I've got a lot of friends that have then made it on to sort of being athletes. So I thought that'd be a good kind of niche and opportunity to pursue. And then the more I spoke to people, the more I was like, wow, like there's a huge opportunity to make a big impact in the personal branding space for athletes. So I guess it all developed sort of quite quickly, and it's been the last sort of 6 or 7 months that we've, focused on athletes, and it's been the best decision that I've ever made, sort of personally, but also professionally, because the opportunities, for the business to make an impact in the space has been huge. So it was a sort of gut feeling that there's a gap and an opportunity. And I was like, I want to be the person to sort of fill that gap.
And it's so interesting to hear you mentioning about social media and just saying, oh, you've been posting for 4 or 5 years. And for me, it's very easy to hear that and be like, yeah, okay, whatever, like that. That's so cool, right? But for a lot of people listening to this, they'll be like, you've been posting on social media and then for 4 or 5 years. So even before that, why did you start posting on social media?
I think so. It goes back to 2020, the pandemic times. I wanted a sort of a pandemic lockdown passion project, and I'd been on a gap year before starting university, and I had all these sort of travel experiences to kind of document and showcase in some way. So it started as a travel blog, it then became a podcast, then a YouTube channel. So I went on my year abroad to Barcelona, so sort of documented that on my YouTube for family and friends, and then obviously it kind of became more than that. So I guess it was a process, but since I was a kid, I've loved sort of filming family holidays, things like that. I've always been quite creative with video content and blogs and that sort of thing. So I think I was always going to go into journalism, marketing, social media in some capacity. But I think it's that ownership of doing it myself, where I was like, yeah, I've got this passion, this desire. Let's sort of create this sort of travel brand as such, and it developed sort of quite quickly. Throughout university, I was doing sort of various social media content. When I was traveling, I was documenting it, and it just grew and grew and grew. And then that sort of desire to, like I said, build something bigger than just doing it myself, that sort of grew at the same time. And then I launched my own business. So it's been a process and a journey,
Amazing.
without a doubt.
I love that. And what, like, obviously, I'm sure you sit on calls all the time with
Yeah.
athletes who are scared about posting on social media, and I equally sit on calls with people who are scared about starting or building theirs. So it's so funny to have that crossover. What, I guess the biggest question that leads on from that is, how did you go through your teenage to uni years posting on social media with not a care in the world what people thought about you, or not a care about your image, or was there, and did you get over it?
Yeah, it's actually such a good question. I don't know why, but I never really had the care of like what people think about me with it, and I don't know whether that's just my personality, the way I am, or just like the kind of opportunities I was getting from it, where that just pushed me past the point of caring about the sort of perhaps judgmental side people might have about it. But all my friends, family have been so supportive, and I guess I built up such a sort of strong community on socials. I mean, not the biggest community in terms of sort of followers, but I had people that sort of followed me quite early that then would be just super supportive of all the different projects I did. Like I've done a few sort of like Instagram live kind of projects for charity, and they always got on board with that. And obviously, YouTube videos, when I share about those on my Instagram, I just get that sort of supportive kind of response. So I don't know, I never really had the kind of, oh, I'm going to hold myself back a bit because I'm a bit fearful of kind of comments. I think because luckily my environment was so supportive from day one with the sort of project I started during the pandemic as such to what it developed to be. I guess I never really had that kind of fear. But of course, when I've sort of filmed in public, with the YouTube and stuff, you do think, oh, people are looking at me. But I think, you just have to recognise, I recognise just the opportunities I could get from continuing to do it. And that just pushes you past the point of being sort of fearful or sort of embarrassed about sort of filming in public and things like that. So, yeah, it's been okay overall, which is a good.
Fair play to you. And I think it's really important given what you're doing now, because it gives you the authority to kind of talk on the piece, right? So any of the athletes you're working with, they can look back and see what you've done personally, and the fact that you built up over 5 years. Clearly this wasn't a business that you went out on a whim and thought, I can randomly do this. It's actually something that, given what you've been doing for 5 years, you're now really well placed to do. So give us more of a sense of the business. How did that get set up, and how do athletes now come to you, and what's the conversation? How does it start from there?
So, I mean, my goodness, it has developed so quickly and so much. If you'd asked me this question sort of 3 months ago, 6 months ago, it would look, be a very different answer. I think in terms of the initial stages, it was that sort of, agency. We do social media, personal branding support for athletes, and it's now developed to the point where we've just launched a marketplace last week to connect athletes to brands for brand partnership opportunities. We've launched our personal branding athlete social media course as well, where we're sort of in the US is where we're sort of really pushing that. So it's developed from those sort of core services of like video editing, one-to-one content ideation, videography, that sort of core set of support, to kind of branching out to these other kind of almost businesses within Press Upload. Like the marketplace itself is almost like a sort of separate business. The course itself kind of, I guess, runs like a all sort of separate business, but it all funnels together, if that makes sense. So the athletes might come and say, look, I need this support. So I'm like, okay, the course is perfect for you, or I need this support. Okay, well, let's do a, kind of a retainer package of all these sort of inclusions, so we can sort of get you going sort of a bit quicker and sort of push on sort of quite quickly. Or whether it's they want brand partnerships, and okay, we've got the marketplace that can help you do that. So it's developed just quite naturally, I think, and that's, I guess, what you hope when you have a business, is everything kind of comes together in time. And I think January for me was a month where, I guess last year I was setting those sort of foundations, and then January everything sort of just came together. The conversations I was having, the partnerships we were sort of forming, and yeah, now we've got all these sort of different parts of the business that kind of accommodate the different athletes, regardless of what their sort of requirements and needs are.
Yeah, love that. And I think there's so much to get into on actually what you're doing, but I want to know initially, how easy did you find the transition of going from purely focusing on building your own personal brand, having done that for 5 years, to now actually having to actively think about other people's, and how to, because they've obviously got different personalities to you, they've got different interests, passions, etc., that they want to build their whole personality around and personal brand. How did you find that transition, having been only, I guess, focusing on yourself really for 5 years?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think I'd done a bit of freelance work, sort of freelance social media work for a few other sort of content creators. So I'd had that sort of mindset and thought process of helping others, I guess, prior to starting Press Upload. But I guess I just tried to focus on taking the learnings and experiences I'd had and then using that to help others. I think I've always, like I said, liked helping others, whether it be,
Amazing.
maybe a future career I'll be a teacher of some sort, but I don't know, I always liked kind of showcasing like what I've learned and sort of like giving that to others. So I guess that sort of transition was relatively simple and sort of quite natural. But for sure, obviously, sport, different niche to travel, so there are different kind of recommendations and advice and sort of types of content that I need to sort of consider. But relatively sort of smooth transition, I guess, based on sort of just me liking to share sort of my experiences, but also having done a bit of freelance work in the past as well.
I guess someone listening to this might say, like, again, if they don't have any idea about social media, or if they have some idea about social media, what is it that you actually do? Like, what does a day-to-day look like in the life of Ellie?
Wow, another great question, and a question a lot of my friends ask me. They're like, Ellie, what's your day-to-day like? And honestly, I say every day is different, and that's why I love what I do, because I think in a sort of other job where I'd be working for someone else's business, I think I would struggle somewhat with that kind of sort of consistency of the day, if that makes sense, because I love how different my day-to-day is. To be honest, most of it at the moment is probably spent in meetings, like lots of meetings, lots of sort of calls and conversations. And I'm trying to obviously create my own content as well. So, there'll be time in the day where I'm sort of creating content. So creating content, meetings, sort of strategy. So I've sort of identified recently, I'm so in the business, I'm needing to take a little bit of a step out to look on the business, if that makes sense. So sort of a bit of business development, sort of like looking at sort of strategy, that sort of thing. Video editing, I do bits of that as well. So it's a bit of a mix of everything, but honestly, every single day is different. So I've been trying to create on sort of a separate YouTube channel I've now launched, sort of day to day, day in the life kind of content to, I guess, document the different days and experiences that I have, because I think my days will get more and more kind of different as this develops. When we do sort of content shoots with the athletes or brands, like that's all gonna sort of develop, I think, quite naturally over time. So in answer to your question, every day is different. Every day is so much fun, mostly in meetings at the moment to sort of have those conversations, build the partnerships, speak to the athletes. But I do various other sort of tasks throughout the day as well when I have time.
I love it. The life of an entrepreneur, right? It's impossible to put it into an easy 9 to 5 schedule.
Exactly.
But on that topic, on what your day looks like and what you actually do, Jamie used to be a bicketer himself. He used to play quite a lot growing up. And I've always been prompting him that he needs to be posting on social media, but even in his current role right now. So if Jamie was come to you and ask to post on social media and ask what to do as an athlete, what would you recommend that he does?
I'm not as good as the cricketers you're currently working with, by the way.
I mean, the first thing we look at is, I guess, current social media content being created by the athlete, looking at the goals they have. So essentially, how can press upload help them get from A to B? Then from B to C, D to, C to D, whatever that sort of process kind of develops and continues based on, goals, aspirations, the time they have, is it short form content, long form content? Do they want to launch a podcast at some point? Do they want to launch other businesses? Like, it's kind of mapping it out. So I guess having a bit of a roadmap where we can then see, like I said earlier, is it the course that will be beneficial for you? Is it the marketplace? Is it the sort of core services that we have, the sort of retainer sort of style packages that we have for some of the athletes? So I guess it's identifying those sort of starting points. Then I guess it's sort of what we focus on is sort of content pillars, and then within those content ideas, so sort of mapping out kind of the approach from a content perspective, looking at sort of cross-platform strategy analysis. So, regardless, I guess depending on what platform they want to sort of create social media content on, let's build out a bit of a strategy to accommodate the different platforms, because they are similar, social media platforms, but they do obviously have their notable differences. So it's important to build out a strategy to sort of accommodate all those different kind of factors. So I'd say a roadmap and a sort of a content sort of thought about the sort of content ideation. That's the starting point, then it builds quite naturally sort of from that.
Yeah,
Nice.
That's really interesting. And I think from my point of view, like when you're talking about all that there, that stuff's obviously coming flooding to me about all the different kind of considerations that have to be made whenever you're working with different athletes. And I think anyone listening from the outside that maybe hasn't had any experience of this world, they're kind of thinking, okay, well, you just post like cool, funny content, right? It doesn't really matter, like you just put it out there. But actually, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes in terms of figuring out each individual person, what's going to suit them the best, what kind of messages and stories they get out. So it'd be interesting to go into a bit more detail. What are, say, when an athlete comes to you, let's go with someone like the American athletes that I see you're working with in the US. Obviously, what they're doing in American football or basketball is going to be very different from some of the female cricketers, for example, that you're working with. So what are the key considerations for each athlete that comes to you that you have to think about yourself, and that's the service you provide them to then build a personal brand and social media strategy around?
I think, yeah, you're so right. I'm a big believer that sort of personal branding within sport, cross sport, and regardless of what sport, you can create a huge impact. You can create sort of still great social media content. But you're right, depending on what sport it is, whether they're a college athlete or professional athlete, there's I guess considerations to take. I think, like I said, it goes back to the sort of goals and aspirations. I think because then that sort of carves out the roadmap. So if they want to become I guess a short form content creator, that's kind of one approach, or is it long form YouTube, which obviously has sort of different kind of considerations and requirements, so I guess it starts off with the goals and aspirations. In terms of, I guess, barriers, I have to kind of identify their barriers to entry and how I can reduce those or get rid of them, essentially. So whether it's they don't want to create the content themselves, so it's sorting out videographer for them, whether it's I don't know what content ideas to focus on, okay, let's do the content pillars and the ideation sort of within that. So I guess it does go down to those barriers to entry, and like I said, if at Press Upload, through our different offerings and projects, we can reduce or remove those barriers to entry, then that's the best starting point. Then we can help them sort of kick on and give them what they need sort of from that position.
Yeah, makes sense. And is it always that you as a business, you're, say, waiting for inbound, like inquiries? You're waiting for athletes to come to you and say this is something they want to work on? Or is it something that you're outreaching about? And then as a further extension to that, if you are outreaching to some of these athletes and asking them if they would like social media support, what do you say to the athletes that maybe turn around and say, oh no, that's not for me, that's not my personality, I'm too kind of quiet to be in front of a camera, I don't really suit that, I don't want to be a public facing figure and build up my personal brand? What do you kind of advise them, given the way that obviously social media is going and supporting these athletes and now, and obviously it's only going in one direction, right?
100%. I think on the first part of your question, I think sort of word of mouth has been amazing. So obviously working with certain athletes has then got us in contact with various agents and other athletes, and I guess within a business you always hope that word of mouth kind of becomes kind of strong, if that makes sense, like that actually functions as you hope it does, and thankfully that's sort of what's happened. I think also the case studies we've got has also helped people that have kind of athletes that have sort of checked out what we're doing be like, oh okay, like they've got some strong case studies, and we know what we're doing, essentially, not to sort of sound arrogant or anything, but we've done a good job hopefully with the athletes we've worked with so far. So I think word of mouth has been super strong. Obviously we are doing a bit of a combination of inbound and outbound. Obviously we want to get as many athletes supporting them as possible. Onto your second part of the question, I think definitely, like, obviously social media content is still a relatively new kind of, I guess, concept. I still think it's in its infancy. It's going to develop and change so quickly. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day saying, in 10 years time, can you imagine what social media will look like? So it is sort of quite this new, somewhat sort of scary still thing for some people, and I guess that sort of perception from an athlete of, oh, I want to be sort of quite private and I sort of don't want to share sort of too much of my personal life, that sort of thing. And I say, yeah, that's absolutely fine. You can still create social media content, you can still build your personal brand, you can still access all the opportunities from social media, but do it on your terms. Take control of that sort of narrative. I think for a lot of athletes, they get a lot of sort of media responsibilities, and they do have to do a lot of media for their clubs and that sort of thing. But by creating their own content, they can take control of that narrative, and they can pick and choose whatever they want to share that can still have an impact. They don't have to share all their personal life or sort of spend too much time creating content when they want to have that downtime. But they can still access and tap into the opportunities if they just take that first step, which is creating that first video, and then hopefully they enjoy it and they want to do more and more.
Amazing, really interesting. And I can imagine, like, when you get on a call with these people, that you're very convincing in terms of sharing that, and like you clearly understand it, so they're probably going to believe you. But then to go in more into like actually the business that you've built with Press Upload and how you're doing these services for these athletes and building great case studies. Obviously, you've got the likes of, I guess, Be Engaged. Are they probably doing a similar thing to you? They're probably one of the top people in the UK. And then actually more recently, I spoke to Atomic Digital, which is purely Snapchat focused for athletes, building up Snapchat, which I found crazy. Mm-hmm. But for you then, how are you like building a business which is kind of has a USP against the likes of a Be Engaged, for example? And then how are you aiming to scale that for the future?
100%. Obviously, it's been important to look at the sort of competitor landscape. I think it's good to have competitors because it shows that there's an opportunity, if that makes sense. There's a market size and opportunity. Naturally, I'd be very shocked if we didn't have competitors. So it's trying to think, like you said, the USP, what's our point of difference. I think the point of difference for Press Upload is our funnel of support. So step one is essentially working with the athletes to create, high quality, engaging content to get them up to the point where they can then access those brand deal commercial opportunities. Step two is our marketplace. So then once we've built them up to that position where they can access those content brand partnerships, the marketplace then facilitates that process for them. So connecting the athletes to brands to athletes for those content brand partnerships. Then step three is basically where we come back in again, where we can help with the deliverables for the partnership. So whether it's the sort of content ideation, campaign ideation, videography, video editing, we support at every step. So it kind of goes, the first step is creative, the second step is commercial, the third step is creative. So whether it's athletes, brands, agents, we can accommodate all the kind of needs and requirements for this athlete driven kind of content, the creative side of it, the commercial side of it. We come in with that funnel kind of approach at every step. So that's what I think stands us apart from other marketplaces that are just marketplaces.
Amazing.
And I guess other agencies that are just agencies, is we can support at every step.
Love that.
I love that. It's so interesting to hear about like all of the journey you've been on. But just to like actually take a step back, I think we haven't asked more about you as a human and like why you decided to go in this. And I guess kind of one of the biggest things about our podcast is why did you decide to start your own business off a bit of a hobby versus taking maybe, I don't know, you say you like social media. Why did you not go and work for a marketing agency? Why did you not go into that route? What made you feel that this was the right step to go down?
I think it's just this desire I've always had to have my own business and be an entrepreneur, the biggest respect possible to, the vast majority of my friends have gone into corporate jobs, have continued into education, and I think that's absolutely fantastic and they're doing such cool things. But if I was then working, I couldn't work and try and help someone else's business be successful when I have aspirations to have my own business and to be successful. And I think it literally boils down to that, is that I would be sort of, and I had a small experience of it during my year abroad when I studied Spanish at university. When I went to Barcelona, I was working for an amazing company. It was a real estate software sort of company doing really cool things, really cool startup. I was doing their social media marketing sort of roles and responsibilities, and I loved it. But I just had this thought for most of my time there, which was, I've got this aspiration to build something myself, and I'm, at that time I was sort of creating my own content, doing all my travel stuff, and the sort of start of Press Upload sort of was, I was thinking about, what Press Upload could kind of look like, the startings of the ideas. And it was just I'm kind of sat here at this desk on my computer building someone else's business, and I have goals and aspirations to do it myself. And I guess I didn't lose sight of that kind of aspiration, and from university went straight into launching Press Upload, still doing my own social media content. And I haven't looked back or looked side to side. I've never veered off that sort of mindset of wanting to kind of have my own business and do it myself. Yeah, love Dragon's Den, love The Apprentice as a kid, growing up, just, little things like that. I know we all probably sort of say things like that, but it's true, like I've always had that sort of interest and desire to, be a successful entrepreneur.
I always say that there's two different programs that people like. They either like The Apprentice or they like Suits, and that shows which one they're going to go into as a person.
I love that. It's a really interesting answer there. And one thing you did mention there, which I think people will see when they come and visit your Instagram, is you've got like Shepreneur Connect as well.
Yes.
As an interesting, and it'd be interesting to get into, because you talked about like it was a kind of mindset thing going into the entrepreneurial space, but also you've clearly got a real passion for the whole topic around women in business, right? So it'd be interesting for you to elaborate on that. How have you found it as building a business, particularly as a young woman as well, and then how has that led to you starting Shepreneur Connect?
Yeah, 100%. I think, on Shepreneur Connect as well, I love being part of communities, and I love being part of, something that I guess I'm a solo founder. So that the big thing for starting Shepreneur Connect was that sort of community feel and sort of going through the highs and lows of business with other female entrepreneurs, because I guess, there are sort of intricate kind of challenges, perhaps let's say, that female entrepreneurs sort of go through. I mean, it goes down, I always quote this, but 2% of VC funding is for female entrepreneurs. There's so much that needs to be done from a sort of investment and funding sort of perspective, but also as a female in sports. I'll be honest, most people I speak to are men, sort of day to day, in terms of the other founders I speak to and other individuals within sport, and that's absolutely fine. But I guess I'm trying to carve female entrepreneurship within sport, because I think women's sport, particularly in the UK, I mean, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think naturally that the business side of that will also get bigger and bigger, and hopefully we'll see more female entrepreneurs within sport. But I guess I think I've been super lucky as well. I don't think I haven't tried to let anything sort of hold me back, if that makes sense. Like I've just put myself out there. I've created LinkedIn content mostly daily for sort of the last year or so, and from that I've got partnerships and sort of connections and people reaching out to chat, and I guess I'm just trying to carve, make an impact, and hopefully try and inspire other female entrepreneurs to, it doesn't have to be sport, but to get into other businesses and to launch their businesses. Shoepreneur Connect, we have I think 20 female entrepreneurs with various businesses, from product-based businesses to service-based businesses. So it's awesome to see the journey, but also we're there to sort of help each other. Some of the things that sort of pop up in the group chat is interesting, because as a service-based business, I don't have to think about the challenges of product-based businesses, but when they sort of pop up, I'm like, wow, it's interesting. I would never have thought about that naturally, because my business doesn't have that sort of type of sort of barrier to overcome or issue. So it's been great to sort of build that out. I have aspirations, want to have a little bit more time, which I don't have the time at the moment, is to build that out into a much bigger sort of community, build a program around it, a course, to essentially be able to give much more, much better ongoing support to female entrepreneurs, because I think it's needed, and I love also being part of the community.
Amazing. And is that also part of a kind of future venture that you want to build out as well?
100%. Like, I guess with being an entrepreneur, I've always got a business kind of mindset and approach to most things I do in life, which I think has mostly positive. Sometimes I think, Ellie, just leave that as a sort of project. It doesn't need to have a business kind of intention to it. But I think there's an opportunity to create something that is, like I said, a course or a program that can give lots of ongoing support, assets, resources, webinars, whatever that sort of support looks like, for female entrepreneurs, I think particularly in their 20s, because starting your own business, it can be daunting, and I've learned so much on the journey so far. I've got a lot wrong, I've failed a lot, and it's all part of the process, and I do have to remind myself on those tough days or those sort of tough moments that this is the game's the game. You got to play the game. It's part of it. So I think if I can provide that support to more female entrepreneurs, that's the intention. But in my future as well, I sort of say to my friends, I want to be like Stephen Bartlett, but without the fame, if that makes sense. So in terms of like investing in other businesses, and I'd love to invest in more female run businesses when I'm older, and be that sort of source of mentorship and sort of investments. Stephen Bartlett's definitely an inspiration of mine. I met him once, and it was great to sort of chat for the 30 seconds I had to sort of chat with him. But he's a huge source of inspiration. Grace Beverley as well, with her few businesses that she has that have been incredibly successful so far. She's also, great inspiration. So that's the intention, is to be a good mentor, but also, try and particularly help female entrepreneurs.
Amazing. And in general for Press Upload, where do the next few months and few years take it?
Goodness, great question. I mean, it's just everything is changing, so quickly. Like the marketplace concept was an idea I guess I had a couple of months ago, to add that to our sort of portfolio of kind of offerings and projects. So I didn't expect necessarily that would sort of come up as a sort of project so soon. So I guess over the next couple of months, it's solidifying all these offerings we have, making sure that funnel works as I intend it to, if that makes sense. Obviously, the intention is for that to work and to provide the support that I hope it does to all those key stakeholders in the sport, so athletes, agents and brands. So I guess making sure that functions and works, getting lots more athletes onto our retainer packages, utilising the marketplace. The goal for Q1 and Q2 is the course in the US. I think there's a huge opportunity. There's 700,000 college athletes, so if we could even tap into 1 or 2% of that, that's incredible in terms of the impact we can have. So I guess, keep doing what we're doing and making impacts, more partnerships. I believe strongly that Press Upload will be successful if we can secure, really positive, strong, collaborative working partnerships. So that's the intention. I want to build out a team. I don't want to do this alone. I love working with people. So I would love to over the next couple of months build out, a team around what we're doing. But just be a business that's making impact. I think there's a huge opportunity for athletes to, like I said, make a huge impact off the pitch, off the field, and I want Press Upload to be the go-to place that can accommodate that and to make it happen.
Love that. Great answer. Great answer. And then to come on to our final question before Sol wraps up, I want to go back probably. I don't know. I think from listening to you speak, I think probably the start of your path less chosen was maybe right at the very beginning when you started posting yourself personally. So to go back to that time, say 5 years ago when you started posting your individual content, what is one thing you would do the same, one thing you would do differently, and one thing you would tell yourself to motivate yourself?
So one thing I would do the same is say yes to every opportunity. I'd say that with caution now, because I don't have time at this stage now to say yes to everything, but at the very start, I certainly did, and it would be an excuse for me to have said no to an opportunity, if that makes sense. Literally, I tried to embrace every opportunity that sort of was given. I said yes, I have put myself out there, I've networked, I've connected, I've posted content, so that's what I would continue. If I was going back and was kind of looking at my next few years, I'd be very grateful looking back if I had done that, which I did, which has been fantastic, and I've 100% reaped the rewards of doing that. In terms of what I would do differently, I think I was, and I can laugh at it now, but I think I was a little bit naive to the actual workings of launching a business, if that makes sense. Like, my brain is very creative, and I've had to work a lot on these sort of financial kind of margins and accounts and using Xero and that sort of thing. Very fortunate, both my parents are trained accountants, so they've been able to help with that sort of side of it, Excel spreadsheets and stuff. But I think I was a little bit naive in terms of the sort of logistics, let's say, and the inner workings of launching a business. So I think I would prioritise that more so at the start. I've been probably playing catch up a little bit because of that sort of start that I had, which was more so just me getting very overly excited about the creative side of it and all the kind of opportunities, but neglecting a little bit obviously the important bits as well, which is the sort of financial sort of sides of it and the logistics. And in terms of the last question, one thing I tell myself to motivate myself, that I will only fail if I stop. Because if you don't stop and you just keep going, you'll succeed. It doesn't matter how long it takes, and I've definitely not reached a point of success yet. I don't believe that. But if you stop, you'll never get to the point where you succeed. So that's what I would say.
Absolutely love that. I think that's so good, and it's such a good message, not only for social media. I think we can both relate to that, but also just for general life as well. So amazing. Little thing to end on, and such an inspirational career that I think is going to only I think we're going to be very fortunate, Jamie, to have caught Ellie in the position we're in, especially if you can start, get to Stephen Bartlett's level, all of that sort of thing, which we believe fully you will. Fully, of course. And that's what's exciting, is we can see that in you. And I was so happy to have had you on at this time of your career. And all you need to do is promise that when you are big time, you can still come back and record another episode. But thanks very much for your time.
No, I mean, thank you so much for having me. Like, I love conversations like this. It makes me reflect and, just talk about the journey so far, which is very important. I often look ahead and don't look back, and it's important to look back and reflect and be proud, of, I guess, what I've done so far. I don't often have those moments where I can reflect. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do a bit of reflection and sort of share what we're doing.
I love it. Well, thanks for coming on.
Perfect. Very, very interesting. Yeah, personal interest, of course, in what Ellie's doing, but I also think it made for a really interesting conversation for anyone listening that's considering kind of a different career path. And she shared some really interesting insights actually into how she's obviously built a business in a really cool space. I think initially, if you don't mind me starting off with a key takeaway, my biggest one was how she had her own experience initially in terms of building herself up personally, but across her own personal social medias. But then the fact that she has now framed it as taking her experiences and the skills that she's learned to help others, and actually utilizing the skills that she had gives her firstly authority to be able to speak on it and be able to help all the athletes that she's working with the fact that she's experienced that in the past, but also she's been able to build an entire business around it. And the fact that she's relying on all of these skills and knowledge that she's accumulated over 5 years of doing it herself, she's now able to utilize that to help other people, which has put herself in a really good position for a business and for obviously what she's trying to do for these athletes.
Love that, mate. I could not agree more. In terms of my takeaway, I think, almost building on that, I think one of my favorite things that she's done is she's gone the way of pure something she did without thinking about it, and has turned that into a business. She was posting on social media as a fun COVID project, and then has turned that into her business world and everything she does, which is cool because it makes it very authentic. It makes her very she's not doing this for money, or didn't do this for money in the first place. And that means that if an athlete was to work with her, then they'd be getting the kind of raw emotion of starting something. And I think if anyone's listening, like, it's such a good way to think back and think, what do you actually do without people telling you it can be a business, it can tell you. And for you, like, that was watching sport and being involved in sport. For me, that was actually the same as social media, but for her, it was very similar. I love that. I think it's very inspiring to seeing people do that, as opposed to just being like, how can I make money, and then ended up in an investment bank hating their lives. So yeah, fascinating take on that. Third
Brilliant.
takeaway for you?
Yeah, no, that was a really good one. My third takeaway probably is a kind of general lesson for all business, really, particularly those businesses that are dealing with individual clients like she is, where she talks about just the power of word of mouth to build her business, particularly when it's in its early stages and she's trying to grow it and bring on more and more clients. It was really interesting when she answered my question around whether most of it was her like proactively going outbound to try and find new clients or inbound. She was saying a lot of it comes through word of mouth now and case studies, and actually that's a really important point to know. I think some people that rush into starting a business might just go all kind of gun ho, try and bring on as many clients as possible, load of outreach, etc. But actually, what she's clearly taken a lot of pride in is the fact that she's brought on a select few athletes, done really well with them, has now got some really powerful case studies, which goes to show what she can do as a business. And then that word of mouth, because of what she's done and the attention she's given those that she's worked with already, is meaning that she's able to grow her business at a pretty substantial rate. So I think that important message around any business is, if you can just provide good quality services, the word of mouth will bring you new clients. And yeah, really important takeaway.
I love that. I love that. I love that one, mate. And to sum that up, the first one was using your experience to help others. The second is just being genuinely very authentic as to what you like doing and turn that into business. And then the third is make sure your services is great, because what then happens is people beg to work with you through referrals, as opposed to having to beg to work for and with people, which is cool. So yeah, three takeaways, three amazing takeaways. Very interesting episode for both of our industries, and hopefully very interesting for you listening. If you want to find Ellie, you can find her on all of the links that we will attach in the podcast description, and we will catch you next week. Thanks for listening.